I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9:40 this morning, Tuesday, May 28th. What I'd like to do first is that we all stand and have our Pledge of Allegiance by Trustee Robert Pearson.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Trustee Bendel.
Here.
Trustee Brown.
Here.
Trustee Henyard.
Here.
Trustee Hunt.
Here.
Trustee Pearson.
Here.
Trustee Smith.
Here.
All members of the board are present, and I'd like to read my opening statement. Welcome all to today's special board meeting. We are here to begin a serious discussion about the true financial situation that Dolton faces. This discussion will take place over many meetings over the next several years, but we can no longer delay taking the first steps needed to resolve the immediate crisis we face. Let me state the problem as clearly as possible. For many years, Dolton has run an annual deficit of $1 to $3 million every year. Previous administrations have hid the full extent of this problem, even as they continued to recklessly spend money that they did not have. When I was elected mayor, it was my hope that I would have a few months to try to avoid a crisis. Unfortunately, that proved impossible. From my first day in office, my team has been identifying ways to save money on expenses and ways to increase revenue. Some of these ideas have already been put into place. Over the next few weeks, we will unveil many more of these proposals, which will improve Dolton's finances considerably. The reality is that today, all of our bank accounts are empty. We have one TIF fund that has $1.2 million in it. In order to make payroll for our employees this Friday and to make a payment on our health insurance bill, we will have to transfer money from the TIF account to the general fund. That is what we will vote on today. Next Monday, at our regular board meeting, the village administrator and the village treasurer will give a detailed presentation that lays out the hard numbers we're looking at. At that same meeting, we will introduce some ordinances that will raise revenues and cut costs. By coming together as a team, Dolton will persevere through these hard times and will emerge from the crisis stronger and with a renewed sense of purpose. At this time, I'd like to introduce our interim village manager, Clem Balanoff, an assistant, Nakia Gibson, and another assistant to him is Josh Kilroy. Clem, would you? I'm sorry. And also we have with us today our village treasurer. Clem, will you, Mike Willis, will you actually give a little presentation here?
Sure. First of all, good morning. Last Wednesday at about noon, we were informed by the village treasurer that the village of Dolton would not be able to make payroll on Friday, May 31st. Quite honestly, the village is broke, swimming in red ink, and on the verge of bankruptcy. Years of mismanagement, investigation of possible criminal activity. Vehicles were purchased without board approval. Money was spent without authorization. Year after year after year, millions of dollars more were spent than budgeted. Last year alone, more than $3 million was spent than taken in or budgeted. And let me be very clear. This administration, if we find financial crimes, they will be prosecuted and those responsible held accountable. Finding out the condition, the mayor asked me to immediately inform the trustees and the unions of the dire situation, and we did that immediately. We immediately went to work to see what could be done to avoid bankruptcy. Among the problems were overspending. In 2010, $4,430,000. In 2011, $1,184,000. 2012, $2,100,000. And 2013, $3,016,000. The Dorchester and Melanie Fitness Center have been losing money together over $500,000 annually. with very little, if any, oversight. Taxpayers of Dolton have been subsidizing these two entities to the tune of about $150 to $200 annually in additional property taxes and getting little, if anything, in return. Over $1 million was spent annually on attorneys, with lawsuits in the hopper that need to be defended. A landfill that stopped paying tipping fees to the village after learning that they would be closed this year because of being at capacity. Collections here are over $100,000 less than the previous year, yet the dumping continues. Money was borrowed and bonded for to pay everyday operating expenses. Some employees were paid for overtime with the real issue of whether or not they had worked the hours. Since the new administration has been in, we have implemented a number of policies to rein in costs and add accountability to the system, including biometrics, the gas, kind of putting controls on the gas pump, because before the park district would come and get gas, it was kind of like a friends and family program. There was no accountability. Take-home vehicles have all been returned and are not taken home, some to as far away as Indiana and other suburbs. Overtime was happened without authorization. We've implemented a policy. It now needs to be justified and approved before it happens, unless there's an emergency. Spending, again, we've also told the department heads that if it's over $250, unless it's an emergency, it must be pre-approved. This village's budget was due on May 1st, yet nothing was done. We are in the process of working on this year's budget now and expect to have a framework in place by next week, with public hearings to follow. We will be doing zero-based budgeting, which means that we will budget what we anticipate revenues to be. With this in mind, everyone should remember that we currently have unpaid back bills left by the previous mayor and village manager of over $3 million, including owing the city of Chicago for water about $800,000, Homewood Disposal, $1.4 million, attorney's fees and bills are still coming in from the last fiscal year of over $180,000, Daly's dispatch service, somewhere in the neighborhood of $225,000. We have many things that we'll be looking at during the process, including revenue enhancements, efficiencies and spending cuts. We will be asking the bargaining unit employees to pitch in, village management to give a little more, and residents of Dolton to help out. I could go on for hours about the problems and potential solutions, but we will be going into much further depth at the next regular village board meeting on June 3rd at 7:30. Today we need to discuss making this Friday's payroll. We have many hard-working village employees who need to be paid and their insurance covered. The weekly payroll of the village is in the neighborhood of $360,000, not including the Dorchester and Melanie Fitness Center. The monthly cost of health insurance is approximately $215,000. Right now we have somewhere in the neighborhood of $195,000 in the bank. The ability of the village to do further borrowing is non-existent because the previous administration left the village's Standard & Poor's rating at junk status. When we found out the dire situation last Wednesday, we immediately went to work to find a temporary solution while understanding that a long-term solution was the only answer. We came up with a couple of possibilities. We could either do a tax anticipation loan, which would only sink the village further into debt, or borrow from the TIF fund, which had $1.2 million in it. Today we are proposing the latter. The former would only kick the can further down the road, and we would be here in a couple of months to do it all over again. This money will be used to pay employees and health insurance costs. But everyone needs to remember that the village still has a backlog of $3 million in unpaid bills. This additional money only gets us through the next probably 4, 5, 6, 7 months. We need spending cuts and revenue enhancements. The trustees are going to be asked to make some very tough decisions in the next month or so, to bring the budget in line. Unlike in past administrations, we will be bringing bills before you before they are paid. We will be putting out RFPs to find the most qualified vendor, not the most politically connected. We will look into selling off surplus property, taxing property that for years has gone untaxed because it was considered exempt, collecting money owed the village, looking to our bargaining unit employees for help, bringing us in line with surrounding communities when it comes to things like sales tax, and overall becoming more efficient. The picture is not a pretty one, but then putting lipstick on a pig does not change the fact that it is still a pig, as they say in Texas. We look to every one of the trustees, village employees, and residents for help and answers. For too long, Dolton has been swimming in red ink and teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. It is time for a change and a new day. With that, I'll stop and answer questions of the trustees who I urge to pass this transfer of money between village accounts to keep the village solvent. The real work begins of balancing the Village of Dolton's budget, something that has not been done in over 10 years. So with that, I will entertain questions.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, I want to say thanks for your hard work working on this cash flow statement, Mike. I guess one of my questions that I have is for the month of July and August, doing this loan, do we have any plans for the July and August? It appears that doing this loan for $1 million is basically going to buy us 1 month.
No, in reality, it
2
does.
months, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
May and June,
Yeah.
2 months.
Yeah, well, in reality, cash flow continues. And we believe that it'll last probably 4 to 7 months. When I say that, there are, we have every month, as I think you have a spreadsheet in front of you, we do have revenue coming in. Like the flow of cash next month, we expect to be, because remember, when we take $1 million, we're going to have some money left over from this month. It's not all being spent, this 1.1 is not going to be spent right away, but we have almost 1.2 million coming in next month, and we expect the expenditures to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, depending on which bills we pay, and I say that very seriously because some bills we're going to have to figure out either how to hold off, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.4, 1.5 million dollars. So I think what it is we're going to use a part of it for the next 4 or 5 months. That having been said, we certainly would like to immediately pay it back, but I think that is going to be dependent on the budget that you pass. If you pass a budget when you only have we think that the revenues for next year are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $16 million. Well, then it means you can't spend $18 or $19 million as has been done in the past. And so that's where, as I said, I think that we're going to look at a variety of revenue enhancements we hope will be voted on next Monday. And then again, on the 17th, we'll probably have more, before the board, of ways to generate additional revenues.
I guess
So-
I'm looking at
Sure.
July. You
Yeah.
see right underneath July,
Okay.
there's negative 27,000. In August, negative 335,000. That is taking effect.
Which one?
All the revenue that's going to be coming in and streamlining. Are we going to be making more cuts to this
Okay.
budget?
Well-
And I guess one question I asked Mike, this purchase of water,
Okay.
can we hold off on that?
Well, let me go back to the first question, okay, Robert, trustee. Okay. What we've done is projected them at the spending levels of last year, okay? Now, we anticipate that we're going to be making some cuts and bringing it more in line with reality. But without doing anything, I think it's only fair to show you how it would be. As far as the payment for the water, that was a very good question. Mike can answer it, but certainly I will also answer that one. The money that we owe the city, it's for the city of Chicago. The village gets the money, the water from the city of Chicago, and we pay them, for the water, and we bill the residents. This year, Chicago passed on a 15% increase in the cost of water. I believe it's next year is another 15%, Mike?
Another 15% next
Another
year also.
15% in 2014. These are costs that we have one of two things to do. Either the village can absorb them, or you can pass them along to the residents. It was supposed to be passed along by the previous administration. They were supposed to have done that in
January.
at the beginning, in January of last year. This year, yes. That did not happen. At any rate, this is the kind of thing that we're looking at.
And I may add to that, is that 15% increase, we actually have been paying it, the village has been paying it,
Correct.
and we've absorbed the cost for the last 6 months. So at some point, we're 6 months away from an additional 15% increase,
Yes.
which would actually put us 30%, a 30% increase over the cost of our water for this past year. Also, I may add that we've discovered that there's been an outstanding loan that the village had made to the Park District in 1999 for approximately $300,000 to $350,000. There's never been a payment made back to the village from the Park District. So I had a meeting with the Park District officials. they agreed that the loan was made. We're going to actually charge them a fair interest rate from 1999, which will be kind of an exorbitant rate. We're going to negotiate that interest rate, and they have agreed to make a $50,000 payment on that loan this week. So that will be revenue that will be coming in this week. The luxury vehicles that were purchased, we hope to have those sold by the end of the week, which may bring in an additional $40,000.
Not by the end of the week.
Well, we're gonna try, we're gonna try. Also, we've made contact, and if you will, Kyra from the Sheriff's Department, we've had conversation with them. The previous administration had purchased a transport vehicle for prisoners. The county has shown some interest in purchasing that vehicle. That vehicle was purchased for approximately, what was it, like $68,000? $67,000. So we're gonna try to pursue the county making a purchase of that vehicle. So in addition to the revenue enhancements that Mr. Balanoff was talking about, we think that we can be aggressive in pursuing some additional revenue coming in. Oh, there's one other thing. The police chief had brought in some ideas in regards to collecting revenue on service calls that other villages, I'm sorry, you're exactly right. The fire chief, if you will, had made some suggestions in regarding billing for some of the services that we do, that the surrounding communities do, and which would probably bring in an additional, chief?
Could be 500, 600,000.
Okay, so we're looking at implementing those things also to bring in additional revenue over the next fiscal year. Okay,
I like that.
Yes.
Clem, how many tips do the village of Dolton have at this time?
The village of Dolton has 3 tips. And I think in a packet, I handed out a map of where the 3 tips are. Only one of the tips has any money in it. The other 2, the money that's been generated has been used within the tip. Is that correct, Mike?
For TIF 2, and then there is some, for TIF 2, the money's been generated and used for the TIF 2.
According to the map here, we are down to 3.
That is correct.
I'm asking, have those 2 been borrowed from already?
TIF 2, no. TIF 3, actually part of the 1.2, 1.3 million in that fund, that's actually part of that is part of TIF 3 also. $1 million is TIF 1, and the additional $200,000 something is part of TIF 3.
So with the borrowing of this here tip from the tip 2, is there interest being, have to be paid back once we borrow this money from our tip? Is that interest free or is there interest on it?
Is there interest on borrowing the TIF?
No, my understanding is, and the village attorney could correct us, that if we had done tax anticipation warrants, then what, just, because I want to tell you about the 2 possibilities. What it would have been is we would have borrowed money against the anticipated or the future real estate taxes, which are coming in September and October from the second half of the bill. We'd go to a bank, and then we'd borrow the money, and then when the real estate taxes came in, the county would, instead of giving us money like they do, they'd give it directly to the bank. And you can borrow about 85% of that, I believe. Is that right, John? Right. In that case, there would be interest. Using it through the TIF fund, it is borrowing basically from the village's money, and therefore, we would not be subject to interest.
Okay, so when that money is borrowed,
It's
we'll pay it straight back to the bank?
No.
us.
It would be back, you'd be paying it back from one fund to another fund. And it, within the village, it's our own money. In other words, it'd be like me writing you a check, and then you just write me the check right back. There's no other third party involved. Because they're both bank accounts of the village. But one of them is kind of like I don't want to say, it's kind of like an escrow account.
It's restricted.
It's a restricted account, I'm sorry. It's a restricted account. So we'd put the money back. That having been said, I don't want to tell everybody that, look, there's a plan to pay it back at this point in time. Because remember, if you have $3 million of bills that aren't paid, we're gonna have vendors that are gonna be, coming to us also for their money. I mean, when we talked about the amount of back bills, whether it's Homewood Disposal, whether it's the city of Chicago, at some point in time, the city may say, hey, we're going to shut you off. We're nowhere near there, I don't believe, right now. Or legal services that we've been getting, that may, you know, they may stop. I mean, the bottom line is something could stop. The 911 system, which is daily, is that daily's 911, right? The daily ambulance, whatever we called it, that we owe money to, that's our 911 service. These are all things that are, in some cases, essential services of the village. And it'll become a question of which bills are paid and when they're paid.
I'm saying to say, because I would like for it to be as transparent as possible.
Yes, sir.
For the residents to understand about the TIF.
Yes.
So they know how to, if there's interest being paid on it, how do we pay it back?
Yeah.
So they can be informed
Yes.
as much as possible, because understanding the best thing is, they need to understand what we're doing, because
Yes,
we're still in a big crisis.
Yes, sir.
So if they understand what's going on,
Yes,
I think
sir.
we'll come out in
Well,
a happy meeting.
Well, one of the things is that, you know, with the next year's, this fiscal year's budget that started on May 1st, our goal is to get a budget in place, you know, very quickly, because one of the problems is, you know, right now, we're still spending at a level that would be higher than would be, you know, than we should probably. And because of that, our goal is to be able to put a budget together in the next, you know, I would hesitate to sit here and promise, but I would say in the next week and a half. And then have public hearings and have input from, not only from the, you know, like the residents and the unions, and the employees, but the trustees. Because when a budget is presented, it's not really always a finished product. It's a working document until, you know, you guys approve it. And then the goal is, and what has to happen is, you have to live within your means. And I mean, and that's a lot of times for government, that's the hard thing. But, I mean, it's like if we were to do a revenue enhancement to raise some kind of a fee or something like that, money doesn't come in right away today. It may be 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road. And so I think it's important to understand, you know, like it's a very difficult situation that we're in. But, I mean, I think that, you know, I mean, I know that we at this table and the mayor look forward to working with every one of you and with everybody in the village of Dolton to try to solve the problem the crisis that we're in, you know, in not only in the short run, but in the long run. Yeah. Sure.
But I guess it's more of a Mike operation question. This next payroll, usually the board sees the payroll, usually it's already paid out.
Correct.
When you process payroll, is someone from the mayor office administration going to look at it before it's finally pushed through, maybe the interim village manager or the mayor? Does anyone right now see that payroll? Are you the last person that sees it, or?
Usually when I get the payroll reports, as soon as I get them, I forward them off to the village administrator.
Is that before or after it's paid?
Before.
And that'll be, Mike, when will the payroll for this week be? I will get it when?
It should be sometime Thursday.
Okay, so, but with the understanding that direct deposit checks what time do they get funded? I mean, I tell you, this is kind of important.
They need to be funded Thursday by 2 o'clock.
Okay, so we will get it somewhere Thursday morning. And I tell you that because if anybody would like to look at any trustees, I'd welcome them to come on around. But at some point in time, you know, no matter what, the payroll's got to go, because you can't give somebody a check and have it not be any good. I mean, none of us would want that, and I certainly would not do that to the hardworking village employees.
I think in one of my emails, Mike, I sent you, is it some more big benefit payouts that have to go out right now?
No, there are not.
We you know, in terms of benefit payouts, I mean, what you're talking about, because what he's talking about, so everybody understands, is when many of the former village officials left service, they had sick time and other things that had to be paid out. And that's one of the reasons that the amount, and that was somewhere over, you know, about a couple of $100,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's why the May's payroll is particularly big. There's not only are there 3 pay periods in May, but we also had the additional burden of a couple of $100,000 in payments for, like, the former village manager who got some money. I mean, and the former police chief who got money when they left. There are some of those that are included in the figure of what 1.276 that we have for payroll this month. Because
Closer to $250,000.
Okay, you know.
And we don't know, in fact, if those payments were legitimate. We're looking into the authenticity of those payments as we go forward.
Right.
But that's something that the previous administration did on the way out the door.
Now, these big payments that went out,
Yeah.
as administrator, Mike, did you have time to share that information with the incoming mayor and whether us trustees, was it any time?
Yes, I did share it with Mayor Rogers, and I did share it with the village administrator. I know I did share it with a few trustees who had asked me about it. I don't know if I shared it with everybody.
And that was after we took off.
And that was after you took
Yeah,
office.
and one thing about that, I will tell you, there was one payment specifically that I tried to stop. I called the bank and said, stop this payment. And unfortunately, it was too late. I mean, that was the one that we had the ability, we thought we might have the ability to stop. We tried to stop it, and the bank said it's too late, it's already been paid.
Well, actually, the bank was trying to
They would try to, but yeah.
tried to stop it. The former employee went in and got very aggressive with the employees there, and they felt intimidated, and they paid the check. So we're pursuing participating in that payment along with and I might add that the former mayor signed off on those payments May 3rd. We actually were sworn in the evening of May 6th. We were notified the morning of May 7th of all those the payments that were dispersed. Any further questions?
So we didn't get a chance to put a stop on any of those payments?
All those checks have been cashed.
They had been done,
Cashed already?
trustee Brown?
Between the time of May 3rd and May 6th that we actually took over, they've been cashed.
Yes.
Um,
And the one that we thought we could stop, we did try to stop them, but I said the only one that we had any ability to possibly stop was one, and it was too late. But these were all checks that were given out before the new board took office.
So with that being said, we're on a new track, so with those type of payouts, all parties will be informed before they go anywhere. I'm saying, whether the mayor and all trustees.
Absolutely. And one of the differences, I guess, is that we're gonna try to bring you things ahead of time before, not just wait till a board meeting or something like that to say, hey, here it is, because that's just not the way to do business. I mean, we want everybody to be able to make informed decisions. I mean, I think at the next board meeting, we're gonna explain what's going on with each of the items, not only, certainly to you, ahead of time, but here, so everybody in the village will know what you're voting on and what are the implications of it. At the last board meeting, like there was a bill for $75,000-ish that this asphalt company wanted, Iroquois Asphalt, or paving, or whatever it was called. It was for a bill that, they had bid $580,000 on a job. A couple of other people had bid, one bid $610,000, one bid $630,000 or something, I don't know, whatever the two were. They were the low bidder. They did the paving, and they come in with a bill for $75,000 more. You didn't pay it, and you shouldn't have paid it, because there was no authorization. But it's
Higher than
gonna
the
be-
other two bidders.
Then that would have made them higher than the other two bidders.
Right.
And that just stuff has got to stop. And I think that's where, being informed, the best that we can, we're willing to spend all the time that we have to with everybody to make them understand, or to understand what they're voting on, because I think that's really important.
And also going forward, we're gonna look into the fact, of course, we don't wanna violate any rules with unions, but we're gonna look into the fact of carrying over time with these many years. I mean, in corporate environment, you just can't carry over 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years of leave time and vacation time and personal time. So that actually puts us in a position where we have to pay huge sums of money to have an employee exit. So we have to take that into consideration and look into those policies and try to negotiate to put other rules in place to not put us in a position.
And one thing that should be remembered is too, I think it's important to point this out, that when we looked at these large payouts that went to a number of employees, fairly significant payouts, only one of them was a union employee, It wasn't like this was, this was management that left this village. Okay, because we should recognize that.
Clem, do you get a certain length of time to pay the tip money back, or can you take as long as you need?
Unfortunately, there probably is nothing written in, I think it's fortunate for us and probably something that in the law they might look at in the future. No, there's not, the statute from, when the attorney comes back, I would like to have him answer that, but I believe that there is no, within that, ability to do it, there's no time limit on when we have to pay it back.
Have any other villages or cities borrowed from TIF before?
Have any, John, two things. One, to your knowledge, have any other cities or villages borrowed from TIF funds? And is there any time limit in terms of when we would have to pay the money back?
From time to time, other communities have had to borrow from their TIF funds. Let me emphasize that it's a borrowing from unencumbered balances that are not specifically earmarked for a TIF obligation. Ideally, the loan needs to be repaid on prior to the expiration of the TIF district itself. Now, I don't know how many years this TIF has left, but it needs to be repaid. It needs to be repaid on by the time the TIF ends, and it needs to be repaid on a priority basis. So the board understands TIF revenues are only to be used for projects authorized by the TIF law, redevelopment, assisting a particular redevelopment project going forward, repaying a loan that you took to create a redevelopment project. So it's a restricted fund. It's a fund held in trust only because of the dire emergency is this being considered. And when we drafted the ordinance, I specifically put in that it needs to be repaid on a priority basis. So I guess the outdate is the end of the TIF district. You also realize that money then is not available to you to help stimulate development. So I think you're going to want to try to the best you can, get that money back into that fund as soon as possible.
Does anyone know what is the end date of the TIF? Did we do any research on the date that we have to pay it back?
I'm not exactly sure the exact end date, but I believe we got about 10 years on that TIF.
Yeah,
I have no clue. I mean, when did the TIF start 9 years ago? Or did it start 8 years ago? I mean, when did the TIF start? When you say
The TIF, I believe, started in 2000.
The trustee Hunt TIF districts run for 23 years.
Yeah.
So we'll just find out the date it was created, and that'll give you the outside date.
All right. Attorney Murphy, for the benefit of the residents and those who may not know what a TIF is and how it's created, can you provide some type of explanation
Yes,
to that?
TIF stands for tax increment financing. When the village determines that there's an area in town that needs to be revitalized, it goes through a public hearing process and passes an ordinance creating a TIF district. After the district is created, for the later years, whatever new property taxes are created in that development are specifically earmarked. They're taken from the county and put into the specific account of the village, rather than having that money distributed to the school district, park district, county, and the like. Once that money is in that specific segregated account, it's supposed to only be used for TIF authorized projects of the board, either lending money for a developer, providing infrastructure, inducing a new sales tax producer to come into the area. So those are the purposes. So these are tax funds that are set aside, allowed by law for specific purposes. That's why that money needs to be repaid.
And how often are they funded?
The money comes into the TIF district
every year.
at twice a year with your first and second installment on the property taxes. But under the law, they're putting what's called a STAF, Special Tax Allocation Fund, which are to be used for those purposes. So you'll be getting more money into this TIF district in September, October, when the second installment comes in.
Okay, we're going to move forward. There's no other questions?
Robert has a question. Trustee Hunt?
Last month, did we actually get $1 million in revenue for real estate taxes, and that got burned through in 1 month, basically?
Yes.
Because we were telling why though, because we paid bills too, you paid something, right?
Yes, I mean,
Yep.
that was part of our property tax money that came in April. Can I see that?
Which one? This is this one, this, I don't know if last year's, it's this month.
That was part of our property tax money for April. And then, we had paid numerous bills in April. When that came in, at that time, there were probably some, as you know, we have a $3 million backlog in bills. When money comes in, we try to pay, whatever we can to try to get that backlog decreased.
Yeah, because this shows we've received based off this cash flow, it's saying in April, we're going to receive basically $2.4 million. So in the whole month of April, you actually we spent $2.4 million in
No,
the month of April.
no, that's the. I
Total
think-
cash inflow, I'm looking at,
Robert, I think you're looking at what we're anticipating in 2014.
but aren't you basing what you're
So-
anticipating 2014, what we did
Yeah.
last April,
I'm basing on what we did on last April.
which was last month?
Right.
So I'm just get my general question. Did we receive $2.4 million last April when we went through all that already?
Yes.
And you have to remember that the large outpour of the 250, I don't have the exact amount, I think it was in the area of $250,000 that the former administration walked out on. So that added an additional burden on our expenses for last month.
And with that being said, Mike, how long have you been the treasurer here for the village of Dolton?
Since June of 2009.
09?
Any further questions? I ask that we move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's consideration of the adoption of ordinance number 13-002, authorizing a temporary interfund transfer from the TIF account to the village general funds. And I'll ask
Make a
that,
motion that ordinance number 13002, an ordinance to authorize a temporary inter-fund transfer.
Trustee Bendel, before you make that motion, I'd like for Trustee Smith to actually read the ordinance.
Good morning, everyone, again. All right, Village of Dolton, Cook County, Illinois. Ordinance number 13-002, an ordinance authorizing a temporary interfund transfer. Whereas the President and Board of Village Trustees of the Village of Dolton have become aware that there are insufficient sums in the village's general fund to satisfy the village's operational needs, including but not limited to employee payroll. And whereas the village is currently pursuing a number of short-term and long-term solutions to address this shortfall, and whereas in the interim, the President and Board of Trustees have been advised that there is an unencumbered balance in account number, what I won't say, and whereas the President and Board of Trustees have determined that in order to prevent a shutdown of operations, it is necessary to make a temporary interfund transfer. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the President and Board of Trustees of the Village of Dolton, Cook County, Illinois, as follows. Section 1, authorization to transfer. The President and Board of Trustees hereby authorize the transfer of $1 million from the account to the village's general fund. Section 2, direction to repay. Village staff is hereby directed to repay account number on a priority basis as soon as monies are available in the village's general fund. Section 3, effective date. The ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage and approval as required by law. Passed and approved this 28th day of May, 2013.
Okay, Trustee Bendel, if you'd like to make your motion now.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize, pass ordinance number 13002, an ordinance authorizing a temporary interfund transfer.
Second.
It has been moved and second by Trustee Bendel and Trustee Pearson to pass this ordinance. Madam Clerk, will you take a roll?
Trustee Bendel.
Aye.
Trustee Brown.
Aye.
Trustee Henry. Trustee Hunt.
Aye.
Trustee Pearson.
Aye.
Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. 6 ayes. Thank you. Okay, before the adjournment, I'd like to ask that we form a working budget group. And in that group, I'd like to request that our village, interim village manager participate, our our village treasurer, Mike Willis, myself, and trustee Hunt to form a working group to work through some matters on the budget, to get some preliminaries in place, to present to the other trustees. Would you have any objection to that, Mr. Balanoff?
I think it's a very good suggestion.
Okay. Trustee Hunt?
Oh, no, sounds good.
Okay, great. We'll work immediately on the preliminaries of a budget so we can present to the trustees, and hopefully we can have a budget in place very soon. With that, any questions? Any old business? New business? Like someone to make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Can I get a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Take the vote, the roll call.
Trustee Vendel. Aye. Trustee Brown.
Aye.
Trustee Henyard. Aye. Trustee Hunt.
Aye.
Trustee Pearson.
Aye.
Trustee Smith.
Motion carries for adjournment. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today.